In this video, we're going to re-terminate the reel end of a fiberglass push lateral cable. With the materials in the re-termination kit 841-37322, you can repair a fiberglass push lateral cable that is broken near the original termination point. Begin by cutting the cable at least 6 inches from the break in the cable. Use a hacksaw or other cutting tool that will create a smooth cut without crushing the cable. Cut a piece of 23-gauge wire that is 2 inches long and strip 3/8 of an inch from the end of the wire. Twist the cut end of the wire and secure with a third-hand tool or vise. We are using a binder clip held in a vise. Tin the stripped and twisted end with solder. Insert the cut end of the TNC inner pin far enough that you can see the wire in the soldering hole of the shaft in the pin. Secure the TNC inner pin with the wire inserted so the soldering hole is facing up. Heat the pin with a soldering iron so that the solder is drawn into the soldering hole, connecting the wire to the TNC inner pin. Take care not to allow extraneous solder on the outside of the pin, or it will not fit into the connector properly. Insert the TNC inner pin into the TNC female coupler, pin first. Use a small screwdriver to seat the inner pin and make sure that it is flush with the inside of the female coupler. Remove the nuts and ferrules from the brass compression fittings and discard. Take the threaded brass fitting and place 3 drops of red Loctite 271 on the threads on one side of the connector. Thread the end of the barrel with the Loctite over the wire end of the assembled TNC fitting and screw the pieces together. Use wrenches or a combination of wrenches and pliers to tighten the assembly. Assemble the epoxy applicator following the instructions included with the applicator. Place the assembled TNC connector on a level surface with the wire tail facing up and fill the cavity of the connector with epoxy. Place the applicator tip at the bottom of the connector cavity and fill slowly while lifting the applicator for the most effective fill and fewest air bubbles and settling. Fill to the top of the thread end and wipe off any excess from the threads. Allow the epoxy to adequately cure before continuing with the repair. Now we will modify the bullet terminal before installation. Use a vise to secure the bullet terminal with the tapered end in the vise and the hole on the side of the terminal facing up. Using a Dremel tool, cut a groove into the side of the bullet terminal to the hole in the side. This will provide a channel to attach the outer shield of the cable for better contact and a secure attachment point. Measure 2 inches from the end of the yellow cable. Use a pipe cutter to cut through the yellow jacket, but do not cut into the outer braid of the fiberglass inner cable. A tip on protecting the yellow jacket from damage is to place cut pieces of tubing around the claws of a pair of pliers to keep it from digging in or cracking the yellow jacket as you are gripping it. If you have a scoring pipe cutter, score from the cut part of the yellow jacket to the end on opposite sides. Otherwise, you can use a heat gun to heat the end of the cable and then use a sharp knife to cut the yellow jacket from the groove to the end of the cable. Use a slot blade screwdriver to separate the cut yellow jacket from the cable, then tease out the braid from around the white fiberglass core. Twist the braid into one wire and tin the end of the twisted wire to prevent fraying. Carefully slide the white core in the twisted braid through a 3/8-16 thread cutter. Cut a 1/2 inch of threads into the yellow covering, then carefully remove the thread cutter. Mark the white fiberglass coating a 1/2 inch from the end of the yellow covering. Score cut around the white covering at the 1/2 inch mark with a hacksaw. Use pliers or nipper pliers to crush the end of the white fiberglass covering and cut away the fiberglass, being careful not to cut the wire inside. Cut the wire 1/2 inch from the end of the white fiberglass covering. Carefully feed the cut wires through the center of the tapered end of the bullet terminal and thread the terminal onto the threads that were cut into the yellow covering. Thread the connector until the exposed center bullet connector is fully visible in the side window. Use a scribe or other hooked instrument to gently pull the outer shield or ground wire through the side window opening. Rotate the connector so the ground wire lines up with the previously cut groove in the side of the connector. Wrap the wire around the connector and into the groove. You can utilize a large paper binder to hold the wire in place within the groove. Carefully secure the yellow cable in a vise so that the wire in the groove is facing up. The size of the brass fitting requires a large amount of heat to melt the solder into the groove and attach the wire. Using a larger tip attachment for your soldering iron can assist with transferring the heat and melting the solder. Allow the solder to cool and set, then cut the tail of the outer shield wire. You can use additional solder to smooth the end of where the wire connects the bullet terminal. Hold the TNC assembly in place over the bullet terminal where it will bottom out when screwed in place, and mark the attached piece of wire where the center conductor's white fiberglass coating begins, so that when stripped, the center wire of the TNC assembly will overlap with the center conductor in the white fiberglass coating of the bullet terminal. Cut the TNC center wire at the mark. Strip the cut wire back 3/8 of an inch. And twist and tin the stripped end of the wire. Apply red Loctite 271 to the outer threads of the TNC fitting. Screw the fitting into the bullet terminal and tighten to snug. Use a dental pick or other tool to gently align the center connectors so that they are parallel and close enough for a solder connection. At this time, be sure that there aren't any stray wires that could short out the connection. Solder the two center wires together. It is important to check the continuity of the center connector and ground and track down and correct the source of any shorts prior to the next step. Leave the completed assembly in the vise so that the cavity of the bullet can be filled with epoxy. Insert the epoxy applicator to the bottom of one side of the cavity to begin filling. Then switch to the bottom of the other side. It is important to slowly fill the epoxy from the bottom to reduce air bubbles and settling. Fill to the top of the window and wipe away any epoxy that drips on the sides of the bullet connector. Keep an eye on the epoxy level for at least 5 minutes and reapply to completely fill the connector if there is any settling. When the epoxy is fully cured, your cable will be ready for use. Be sure and check out our other instructional videos online, and our support teams are always happy to assist you at 1-800-767-1974 or 1-859-499-0122.